My conversation with Ryan Maibach and Ethan Uhl from Barton Malow will be presented in two parts, with the first part in this episode. It's in two parts because we really needed the time to have a full and informative conversation with this great company. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did.
When you hear the phrase, soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high-rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Doran.
I'm very pleased to have Barton Malow as my guest today. First, Ryan Maibach, who is the president and CEO of Barton Malow, headquartered in Southfield, Michigan. A fourth-generation builder, Ryan began his 26-year career in his family's business as an intern in the summer of 1996 and was hired full-time as a project engineer in February 1997 upon graduation from Purdue University with a construction engineering degree. He's filled several roles since and was appointed president of Barton Malow in 2011. Ryan has worked to expand the enterprise through rapid alignment, strategic growth, and innovation. With an initial vision to establish core purpose and values, more recently he set a vision for industry transformation. As part of this vision, Ryan led Barton Malow's entity expansion in 2020, transforming it from one company into a family of companies. Today, the Barton Malow family of companies consists of 4 entities and 5 partner firms, all operating on a culture of empowerment, continuous improvement, and harnessing the full potential of each team member. His passion for positively impacting the industry is rivaled only by his unique ability to connect with team members and serve his community. As a devoted member of the Detroit business community and active with the Business Leaders for Michigan, Ryan serves various organizations. He's been recognized with numerous accolades throughout his 26-year career at Barton Malow. He was named to Building, Design, and Construction's 2009 40 Under 40, appointed to the 2010 Young Engineer of the Year by Engineering Society of Detroit, and he's also appeared on the respective 2012 40/40 lists of Crain's Detroit Business and Engineering News Record. All of them excellent and outstanding recognitions, and well-deserved as well. We'd perhaps not be having our conversation without the help of my other guest, Ethan Uhl. I met Ethan when Steve Shelman reached out to me to deliver a soft skills workshop for Barton Malow team members in Southfield, Michigan and Glendale, Kentucky. His explanation of why this workshop is happening, and I'm referring to Ethan's explanation, grabbed my attention. He said simply that part of his responsibilities as a general superintendent is to help develop and retain our talent. We recognize that soft skills are a key attribute to leadership development. And now let me introduce Ethan in his own words. I started with the laborers union right out of high school. My dad and several other family members worked for Barton Malow at that time and helped me hire in. I spent 11 years working with the tools on projects all over Michigan, the East Coast, and Texas. 4 years ago, I was promoted to general superintendent for our concrete division. My responsibilities primarily include safety, execution and development, resource planning, team alignment, and union engagement. I take an active role and represent Barton Malow at the American Concrete Institute. A highlight of my 15-year career with Barton Malow was in 2018, when I helped orchestrate our mega slab pour in Arlington, Texas, which earned Barton Malow a golden trowel and an unofficial world record for the largest indoor continuous steel fiber reinforced concrete slab. I'm so pleased to have Ryan and Ethan as my guests. Gentlemen, welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast.
Dennis, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Dennis.
You're very, very welcome. So I don't normally start with a question that wasn't simply inspired by the introduction, although I do have to say, and I'm not trying to be overly gracious, I am inspired by both of you, just based on what in Ethan's case he said about himself, and in your case, Ryan, someone probably very ably helped you to say about yourself. But it says something very, very important about Barton Malow, and it's not the only reason why I'm wearing one of your shirts for this conversation today. I just happen to like the color, the size fit, but it wasn't that your name is all over it, really. So Ryan, let's start with this question, which I fed you last night. What words best describe the essential values that your firm embraces every day.
Yeah. Hey, Dennis, I do have to say, too, this sure looks good on you. But I think specifically to your question, our stated values are integrity, partnership, and empowerment. And we go on to further define each one of those. But by and large, they're generally well understood words at face value. Interestingly, I think even as a part of the introduction, I had opportunity early in my current role to be a part of a team that revisited and revised, created those three. Went deep into our history to try to draw those out more specifically and overtly than maybe what we had in the past. And I think that's been about 12 years now, and so we're actually on the cusp of refreshing that ideology and reevaluating it. So I think to your question, what essential values, I think a word that's been pinging around in my head more frequently for the last couple of years or so, really I think a lot through just experiences in COVID, is just the word dignity, and just the concept of human dignity, the need therein, and the opportunity as well. And just that, really, if you look it up, I always enjoy looking up words, and in Webster's still have an actual dictionary that's kind of fun to flip the pages through. It just really gets to the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. And certainly for me, that ties into an element of faith. And I think it's a word that I do hope that people in any walk experience with us, that they feel as though that they're respected in whatever that interaction may be. If that's UPS driver dropping off a package in our office or our job sites, one of our own team members, or a subcontractor, whomever it is, that they're treated well. We're not perfect by no means, and so do we miss the mark? Certainly, but that's certainly the objective, is just to treat people with respect.
Yeah. I think that's terrific. And I think perhaps all three of those words, or four of those words, were among the words that were displayed in your headquarters building. I took a few minutes and I literally walked around while I was at Southfield, and I did write down, and I think I made a flip chart out of it that we used in the training. And I wrote down pretty much every word that I saw. And I saw the word integrity up on the wall. I saw the word people, which I want to talk more about that in a very specific way. I saw the word inspire, innovate, reimagine, collaborate. I saw empowerment. I saw think tank. I didn't see partnership, but I'm sure that's not. Maybe I just didn't get to that part of the building, because the rest of them are all there. And of course, in researching it to find the source of what seemed like a really great quote, which is the parachute quote. I found versions of it. I didn't find the exact words, but one of the sources of it that I found was Frank Zappa said something very much like that about parachutes and mines. But I think it really I hadn't seen it before, so it really struck me. Because it speaks to what's so important to understand about trying to navigate society today. You mentioned the post-pandemic notion. We all went through an experience that we hope will be once in our lifetimes, and that was too many, and it had many effects on us. And in the construction industry, the good news, bad news is, the good news is we were considered essential in many places. So once we figured out how to add the additional personal protection for the virus, we were back to work, and that was done within a matter of, in some cases, hours, and certainly no longer than days or weeks, because of that condition. But the idea of how we view ourselves and view other people is obviously at the crux of what you're thinking and you're feeling, and how you expressed your thoughts, and particularly as you zeroed on this notion of treating people with dignity and respect. It can't be said too much. And from what little research you did about me, or maybe you had a chance to find a copy and flip through my book, to me, it's all about people. And that's one of the reasons I give credit to Steve and Ethan to take on and say, we need to do something for our folks in the soft skills area, and they found me, and I was very happy to come out and do that for you guys. But that also says something about your company and your company's culture. In a really operational way, a real practical way, because neither Ethan or Steve are your kind of sitting around BSing kind of guys. They're both right at it. Again, I know you know them both. You probably know Steve longer because he's with the company a lot longer. But they're in the business. And they know that every day they got to do the things that Ethan talked about in his own introduction. So he has a crisp, clear understanding about what his role is and how that fits into the overall picture of being, a highly respected organization serving customers. Kudos on again, just the fundamental nature of taking a deep look at yourself. And hopefully a complete and honest and thorough look, which I think the results would suggest that it was 12 years ago, and may begin again as you do what you refer to as a refresh. But those are the right values. Those are the right words. Those are the right soft skills. Because again, we're in the construction business, but we're really not. I always say that we're really in the service business. Our service happens to be building things. And if we're in the service business, that means that we must be serving someone. And Ethan heard me talk about this in the workshop. We call them customers. They put money on the top line of the company, and we hope some money is left over on the bottom line based on how we perform. So I appreciate your answer to that first question. Ethan, so your first question, which this is really a softball question now, because I hadn't seen your introduction until after I sent this question. But I'll read it anyway. But there's probably more to it. So maybe there's something else that you want to say. So when you first joined Barton Malow, what was attractive to you about Barton Malow as a place for you to grow and advance in the construction industry? And you can't say my family worked there.
No, I mean, hey, I think that's probably part of it, right? But I think as I, settled into, working at Barton Malow, I would have to say what attracted me to Barton Malow and the the future or the growth of being in the industry was the presence of craft people in leadership positions. One being Chuck Minkowski, who at the time was the director of operations, but worked in many different trades prior to becoming the director, and now is the COO of Barton Malow. Another one who is a little bit closer to me is John Blanchette. He was carpenter by trade and general superintendent of our concrete operations at the time. So that's to name a couple. And I'd say through the years, that's stayed pretty consistent. There's been, other people that have worked their way up through the craft. Matt Lentini was, millwright by trade and is now a vice president. Joe Blanchette was carpenter by trade and is now a vice president. Craig Lowell, another great leader and was carpenter by trade and is now a director in project delivery. So definitely ample amount of opportunity for not necessarily people that don't have a college education, but have learned the tools of the trade and have exhibit good leadership qualities. And I think a lot of that has to do with, credit to, our owners, our CEO, Ben Maibach and Ryan Maibach, and other executives within our company. I think they value and see the importance of, craft perspective and experience within our industry.
That's a pretty damn good answer. What I like about it is it's specific. You mentioned specific people, but you surface something which is, absolutely essential, but not spoken about enough, and that is the value and importance of highly skilled people performing work, growing, coming into supervision, developing other people. Say something from your perspective, Ethan, about how Barton Malow, in an organized fashion, develops the people that they bring into their workforce, teaches them, shows them how to become better, how to grow. What are your thoughts about that?
I think, to relate to me personally, I mean, I think there's always been I would say a group of people, because it's not really just one, but I would say there's been a group of people, a team of people focused around leadership development. I think we still have that to this day. But I mean, I remember sitting in a like an up and coming leadership class 10 plus years ago, with a various with various number of people of different years of experience, and that's continued. Again, I think part of Dennis bringing you in to talk to some of our team members is really just continuing or carrying that torch on with what with what's expected. Is we have to, if we don't develop our people, we can't continue to grow as a company.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, what do you hear? And listen to what Ethan's had to say. What do you hear?
I think it's great. And I just to piggyback on a couple of points that Ethan made, one, just a little bit of context as well on Ethan, some of the names that he mentioned. And I think in a lot of ways, this is a real positive in our industry, is that it is an industry that is often multi-generational. And so, Ethan referenced his dad, Alan, John Blanchett, who he also referenced as, I believe, uncle. And in turn, there is this legacy. And in a lot of ways, that's really positive, because it makes it easier to learn, if you will, through the experiences of others. And again, positive in a lot of ways. It can certainly have some of its drawbacks, especially for potentially individuals that come into the industry that don't have that legacy. But yeah, absolutely. I think the power of human potential transcends however you enter the industry. And so whether you enter the industry through the trades, if you enter the industry from some sort of college experience in building construction or engineering or whatever it may be, those are just points of entry. And I think with time, your experiences and the learning that your experiences afford you are really the best forms of education. And I think it's incumbent upon each of us then to try to figure out, how do we make good on that? How do we continue to engage in curiosity and learn and grow? And I think Ethan's a terrific example of that. I think it's an organization's responsibility to try to do the best that we can to create those experiential opportunities, and then create forums, much like Ethan described, where you can talk about it and process it, and again, learn more collectively. And so, I think we're doing some really neat things. I think as an industry as a whole, I think we're doing a lot of really good things and moving the needle towards, embracing just an increasingly broad pool of people that can see all the benefits of construction. Mm-hmm. Just one really quick aside, just to that point, when we talk about trades as a point of entry, or potentially college backgrounds as a point of entry. One of a really great project engineer that I worked with ended up getting hired. She had an advertising background, started as a temporary employee, but fell in love with construction as a result of family move. She's no longer with Barton Malow, but still working in the industry on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And she was fantastic. So, I mean, there's no prerequisite for how you engage in the industry, but once you're in, assuming you enjoy it to the degree that the three of us do, there's a lot of great directions that your career can go. It's fun to watch that evolve for people.
Yeah. Ethan, yes, go ahead.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, the sky's the limit, really, with opportunity. Probably not just at Barton Malow, but specifically to Barton Malow. I mean, as long as you are willing to learn and willing to grow and put the work in, there's an ample amount of opportunity out there.
Yeah. One of the things that I just an observation as I listened to the two of you speak is one of my top soft skills comes to mind, and that's authenticity. You both speak in very clear, and I mean this in the most positive way, plain language. There are people out there running construction companies. There are people out there running unions, because you're in the unionized segment of construction, at least for some of your projects, if not many of them. I'm very familiar with the unionized construction world, working with one of the building trades unions directly in their training and education area. But one of the things that you can't screen for if you don't have an ear towards not simply what a person says, but also how does that get backed up? How do you know it's real? And now I'm kind of moving into the little bit of a discussion around workforce development. So topically, we're kind of moving into that area for a little bit. But it's it is a challenge, and it seems to me that what you've done, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that your messaging to candidates, to potential hires, is very specific around the elements that you've both been discussing fluidly. Again, I'm talking to two entirely different people. One with 15 years experience, one with 26 years experience. One is part of the ownership of the company. The other one's got family in the business. And as you both know, not only is the construction industry dominated by smaller firms, particularly in the trades, at the trades level, but it's dominated by a lot of family-owned businesses that as generations come and go, they managed in some cases to just survive transition from one generation to another. But in the case of Barton Malow, what you've gone through as you continue family ownership is to thrive. And that suggests that your family values are in sync with the values of your company, and vice versa. Is that a fair observation?
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot there, Dennis, and I think we could probably unpack a handful of those topics. Family business is, I think, an interesting thing in and of itself, and I think when you look at family businesses, there are absolutely some elements of points of consistency, as well as every family is entirely unique. Can say not only my family was not the founders of Barton Malow, but interestingly joined Carl Barton. My great grandfather joined Carl Barton as a carpenter back in 1925, almost immediately after he had started Barton, the CEO of Barton company that evolved into Barton Malow. But I think when you talk about longevity, one of the things that I'm really grateful for, that I do believe informs our approach to how we look at people and the culture in the organization, is that, hey, Carl Barton was a man of faith, wrote quite a bit about that, which is really wonderful to have the ability to go back and look at and read. And we're doing a fair bit of that as we approach our 100th anniversary next year. But then in turn, my grandfather, as he led Barton Malow, was also a pastor of a church. Mm-hmm. And so, I think faith has been a part of the leadership and the perspective, and certainly the culture that we've looked to try to create. I wouldn't say that it is a Christian organization necessarily, but absolutely, even the three words, the values that I mentioned, you can absolutely draw parallels back to a measure of biblical premise and wisdom. Is that the only way? I'm certainly not going to say that that's the only way for any business, but it's certainly been a key part of our business, and I think it definitely informs the past as well as the future. And I think it also helps when you engage in something, and while you value that something, you value the business and you value the work that the business does. There's a bigger picture, and you can. It helps to put things in context that, again, it's just a bigger picture than just the work at hand. But I think another just really key point there is that, if you believe that people are created for a purpose, then it connects back into the point that I referenced earlier around dignity. So everyone is created for some purpose, then certainly worthy of respect. But again, the neat thing when we do talk about construction, Dennis, to your point, is yes, there is a very strong presence of family businesses, but then there's also just family legacy. And as we mentioned before, whether we can talk about the legacy of Uhls within Barton Malow, or Blanchette's, or Binkowski's, there are several families that have been a part of the organization for multiple generations. And that's great. And it's also great then to be the point of entry for new families that maybe don't have generations in the past, but potentially have generations in the future. And we do talk a fair bit about that as well. So,
yeah, I didn't know specifically, and you talk about it very clearly and very easily about the connection to faith. I think that's so important and doesn't get talked about comfortably very often. Again, there are some things which are difficult to talk about for reasons that don't make any sense, and there are other things that aren't. But this whole notion of recognizing, my phrase is that there's a plan for me, and my plan is made by a power higher than me. And that's the way I say it. And the notion which I live in is I got yesterday's done, and tomorrow is just what I think I'm going to be doing, but who knows? Mm-hmm. That serves me very well. Because for all of us, and Ethan's right on the front line dealing with craft workers and shop stewards and all kinds of other people on that construction site at Glendale. All you've got is what's happening right now, and an opportunity with whoever you're interacting to produce a positive result. To get a decision made, to get an agreement, to get a problem solved, to figure out the next step, or just to figure out why something happened that shouldn't have happened. All the myriad kinds of things that happen every day. You've got to operationalize, something as fundamental as treating people with respect. It's got to be operationalized, and in a manner that the way it feels to people, particularly for you, Ryan, and for you as well, Ethan. A general superintendent, you're in a more visible leadership role in the operation. You're not just a manager. And I'm sure Ryan would say that, pretty much say it the same way. Leadership is something which is part of what you need to be every day. And you need to do it in a way that demonstrates the values of the company that you align with. And so that people can easily see, this is the kind of company I work for. You don't hire a company. You don't build relationships other than through a contract with a company. You build relationships with people, both inside and outside the company. What are your thoughts around that, Ethan? What are your thoughts?
Barton Malow, as one of our core values is people, as well. Or I think that Barton Malow continuously strives to build relationships not only with clients but with our employees. But I think they stress the importance of it's trying not to look at it as a client base. Is we want to build a relationship and get to know those people and show our true value by not just winning a project off of cost but showing them who our people are. And once they get to know those people, they understand that we are really truly looking out for their best interest. Mm-hmm. And specifically on the project down here, we've gotten some client remarks that they're truly impressed with how the magnitude of the job and how many people are here, but they've never once seen, or I don't want to say never once, we're not perfect, we try to be, but just how people present themselves, right? The relationships they have, the conversations that they're engaged in.
Ryan, what are your thoughts?
As we talk about relationships, I would also just say we can certainly validate the importance of them, but it's also what makes it fun. I mean, it's really the opportunity to engage with such a diverse set of people. I think one of the really cool things about construction, and one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was more project-based, is you think about, to Ethan's point, the range of people that he has the opportunity to interact with on a regular basis, on a near daily basis. I mean, we have had, I forget how many cabinet members visit that project. And certainly in the state of Kentucky, many individuals in political leadership. Then there are all of the individuals engaging from regulatory standpoint to then the leadership of Ford to the management of Ford. And then so you can pivot from engaging and interacting with the cabinet secretary to trying to figure out how to deal with the problem of the day with a set of iron workers or whatever it may be. So, the importance of, again, the soft skills, the importance of the ability to engage across that broad spectrum is so incredibly high in this industry, but it's also what really makes it enjoyable. Mm-hmm. It's not as though you're dealing with just this, consistent demographic on a regular basis. You're always engaging with new folks. And what's fun is that the range of interest, the range of capabilities, back to, again, the absolute uniqueness of every individual that you're going to be interacting with. So for me, that's what made the industry fun, makes it fun today. Relationships are not only good business, but it's just incredibly enriching and fun as well.
Yeah.
I guess you meet so many different types of people and personalities, right? I mean, with a couple thousand employees down here, not just for Barton Malow, but there's so many different personalities out there. And to Ryan's point, it does make it fun for sure.
And also, to your credit, the reason that the workshop that I suggested to you, you guys said, yeah, let's do that workshop. And that workshop was all about understanding you. And my premise is that in the world of soft skills and building relationships, and unless you really have an honest understanding about you in terms of your personality, communication style, et cetera, it's very difficult to try to gain an understanding about other people if you don't understand yourself first. So that was kind of like a foundational kind of a workshop to raise everybody's awareness of who they are from the standpoint of their behaviors, not their technical background, not their education, not their certifications, but them as people. And so again, I give kudos to Ethan and Steve for saying, yeah, let's do that. I think that would help us. Please be sure to listen to the second part of my conversation with Ryan Maibach and Ethan Uhl from Barton Malow in the next episode of the Soft as Steel podcast. We really dive in deeper on the next part, so you won't want to miss it.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at dennisduranspeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Doran.